Hello and welcome everyone, I am Madals and welcome to some more Heart of the Swarm beta games. Today we have got a ladder game. It is a ZvT and it is between millenniums rather. goswser, who is the red Zerg player down in the lower left. And in the top right, we do have the blue Terran. It is GoOdy! And I know I got excited about saying GoOdy because I think GoOdy's cool. I don't know why. I don't know. Do you ever get that irrational like of people you have never met and or spoken to, and you're just like, for some reason, I think you're cool. And that's what I get with GoOdy. I also get exactly the same with Hyun. Although I have briefly spoken to Hyun, like in game lobbies and stuff, where I have been a bit of a fanboy, and I'm just like, Hyun, you so good, and just like a smiley face, and he laughs at me, and is just like, you noob, and I'm like, yeah. But anyway, back to the point of this game. It's on Howling Peaks, which is a map we don't actually see too often because of this. Your natural has one entrance and two entrances, which is roughly twice as many as any player usually likes to have. It is probably the most freaky map ever going in terms of a ladder map, but just because of that. And the reason it's so difficult is because you can't wall off. You can't really defend from one angle, whereas for Zerg players, they could usually go for something like, say, Evo, Spine, Evo, Queen, Queen, in order to hold the front. No, Hellions, they're still going to come streaming on through the back. The one plus side, though, is these rocks. The quick and easy route into this back entrance is you come straight down here, through them rocks, and then up and through. However, to prevent early game just being impossible, you have to make a bit more of a commitment. You have to come through the side here, and then come all the way down, which is quite a lot longer. And once you take your third, you can knock down this rock tower in order to block this off, and then you can hold your third base a bit more comfortably. So that's just a quick rundown of the map and the sort of things that we should be looking out for. But it doesn't affect anything because goswser has to still take a hatch relatively early. Just got the spawning pool before the hatch though, which is a bit more unusual, but it's in no means a massive problem. Meanwhile, GoOdy, he went for an early gas. He's getting out the Reaper. That's just to get the scouting information. There's this cliff area that you can easily utilize in order to make that Reaper effective. And it's going to be able to do potentially a bit of damage before the Queen pops. It's just once that Queen gets out, it really does put quite an end to any fun you may have. So, as we can see, the Reaper coming over. We've got the first Zerglings just popping out. Only two. They're going to just take a bit of map control, get a little look, probably die to the Reaper now, but that's unfortunate. The poor Reaper will get a kill, assuming it's on attack command. Yep, there we go. So the Reaper now is just going to start getting microed so much quicker than Zerglings, should never take a hit, and then we'll heal up very quickly with combat drugs. So already this Reaper has done 50 minerals worth of damage. The Queen is out though, and therefore will push it back further, but look at this, nicely healing up, just happily going about what it may. Sees that the hatch was out a bit later than you would expect, but GoOdy would have already known that just by seeing the Zerglings running across. Meanwhile, behind this, the factory coming down, the reactor was just there to get some marines out, and we also have the command center on the high ground though, just to make sure that he can hold it relatively easily. This Reaper desperately trying to kill a hatchery. It's like, I'm sure in Wings of Liberty I had a grenade or something, but unfortunately no. Just now, that tiny little gun that does hardly any damage, but two more Zerglings could potentially die here. GoOdy is just trying to deny the scouting information, but with the Overlord there, to be honest, goswser knows most of what he needs to, but you just can't take the map control if you don't have any units on the ground. So that is good play all in all by GoOdy, just trying to make sure that actually I'm controlling this map. You're not going to move out any further unless you spend more money on getting Zerglings out. But that brings me nicely to the work account. Actually, we see that because GoOdy went for that Reaper early, because he went for that factory, and oh my goodness, is the armory going to get spotted? Yes, it is. That is critically important. And you may be thinking, if you haven't watched much Terran in Heart of the Swarm, Madals, why does an armory matter? Why is that an important thing? It's important, boys and girls, because it means that Hellbats are going to be coming out. And do you know what Hellbats mean? They mean that all your drones are dead. That's simple. Unless, of course, you defend, in which case then it's not actually too bad. But this is a very interesting push out of GoOdy. He's going with just a handful of Marines, that Reaper and the two Hellions, which will shortly, I have no doubt, will be Hellbats once the armory finishes. That suddenly means that these Queens aren't too strong. This is actually like do you remember there was that phase where lots of Terrans were going for Hellion Marauder pushes? This is like level 2 of it. This is Oh, Zerg players, you learn how to deal with that. Try it now with Hellbats. That's going to be even more difficult. We've got 18 Zerglings coming down. The Hellbats, of course, are going to be expected. They're going to deal very nicely as long as they keep those Marines safe. But in they come. We see the Queen starting to take some damage already. The Queen's marching back as quickly as they can. And what GoOdy really needs to do is get in a nice position with these Hellbats for once the Zerglings start popping out. But the Zerglings starting to chip away at everything. The Hellbats trying to come back, trying to deal with this. The Marines getting cleaned up very nicely though. Meanwhile, quite a few drones have got taken down. The Hellbats trying to get into a good defensive position. Do finish off the rest of those Zerglings, but unfortunately the Queens will have the last laugh and take it down. But GoOdy managed to kill 7 workers with that push. And that means that it's actually taking the worker count just within 4. GoOdy secured up his natural base behind this. But behind this, goswser, he's getting up his roaches. 7 on the way. He could come for some counter aggression. But with Hellbats in the bunker coming down, with the starport on its way out as well, and the 3rd command center, that just means that actually GoOdy, he's going to have a good economy. But more importantly, those roaches are going to need to be very, very strong, because a good number of Hellbats shut down a small number of roaches very easily indeed. And that's because Hellbats have a significant punch to them when they attack, and also a super high amount of armor, and just general health. And as such, it just means they can tank an awful lot of damage. This Queen is almost certainly going to die there. The creep tubers do go down as well. That's going to be frustrating. They weren't cancelled either. But now we see the Hellbats pushing forward. GoOdy is just charging straight towards his opponent's natural. The roaches are coming round, and the way you deal with roaches with Hellbats isn't unfortunately head-on like this. You want to try and surround them in order to get as much splash as you can. But as we see, already a couple of roaches getting killed. The Hellbats will now get cleaned up. But this is just buying GoOdy time. It's getting him scouting information. He's forcing units out of his opponent, which is actually keeping goswser very low on his drone count. Look at this, 16 Zerglings on their way out. Some counter aggression is on its way, but with the bunker there, and as long as GoOdy gets into a relatively defensive position, he is going to be able to hold off lots of this counter pressure. And especially now the Widow Mines are coming down as well. Once those Widow Mines are out, that's some good splash damage if they go down on Speedlings, but here they come. Speedlings on their way. goswser desperately going to try and do some damage. These Widow Mines going to burrow in time. Well, one goes down as fast as it can. There goes down a hit. Picks off a roach very quickly. But the Hellbats are trying to get repaired up. And, well, that just is pretty cool, put simply. But still, now we just see this bunker getting repaired as quickly as it can. Trying to hold this off. A lot of SCVs are getting killed, though. And that is quite frustrating for GoOdy at the moment. But the bunker is now starting to lose health very quickly. We saw that the wasn't on auto repair, but the first Banshee is now out, and as such, these roaches will finally get cleaned out. But goswser did so much damage here. He's killed 18 workers already. The Widow Mines and the Banshee will put an end to it. But that's just huge. 18 workers killed. That gives goswser such a big advantage in terms of the worker count. He has also got up his 3rd base. He's getting a Spore Crawler at each of his hatcheries as well in order to make sure that he's safe from those Banshees. And he's also getting out the Hydra. So, just generally speaking, that counter-aggression was absolutely fantastic. That really brought goswser back into this game. It was a lovely timing push. GoOdy was able to hold it off eventually, but he just lost so many SCVs, and that is the big problem for him, because now, even though he does have this 3rd Orbiter Command and the 3rd Mule, it's going to take him a while to catch up, put simply. But with those 3 mules, he's not in a terrible spot. He needs to do a little bit of damage if he can, though. So trying to do that at the moment with these Hellions. He's got 2 Banshee out as well as getting a Raven behind this. So that Raven going to give him detection in order to start dealing with creep tumors. That's one of the most common ways to use it, and also a good thing to do, because as a Terran player, you don't want creep getting up close to your base. But everything, as far as compared to a Wings of Liberty game might seem, is a bit behind. We're at the 12-minute mark, and we're not even seeing a hive yet. We're not seeing an infestation pit or anything like that. Roach Hydra is a good mid-game composition. We've got Widow Mines being positioned around, and really their purpose is just in case there's any Speedling run-bys. They will straight away pick off a good number of Zerglings and deal a nice amount of damage. It's a good way to defend from light aggression, and therefore GoOdy playing really solid, taking his 3rd base. Also, he's got his first tank coming out now, but behind this we see goswser getting out his infestation pit. That could just be for getting out the hive. It could also be for swarm hosts. They're not that great against Terran due to tanks, but they're still fairly strong. Also, it could just be in order to get out some infestors, which I think is the least likely thing, but the reason for that is because you want to get Hive out. So one, you can go for Ultras, which are just really solid in Heart of the Swarm. But two, and much more importantly, is you can get out Vipers and Roach Hydra Viper is a very strong composition. Get a Blinding Cloud down on the siege tanks, and then you just chuckle to yourself as you start to win. But now some roaches just wandering their way around. I'm going to try and sneak into the main, but this double barracks wall off just means that those roaches probably not going to have too much fun if they try and go that way. Meanwhile, goswser is taking his 4th base. He's trying to stay a base up on his opponent at all times and is going for a good number of swarm hosts. So this is an interesting strategy. Swarm hosts can be very good, but you need a good number of them. And the reason for that is just that a small number, tanks shell the locusts and pick them off with relative ease. Start getting 8, 10, 12 swarm hosts, if not more, and you just get waves and waves of free units that deal a lot of damage and are very difficult for a Terran player to deal with. But luckily for GoOdy, he's got the Raven down, and that just means that actually he is going to have the detection required in order to spot the swarm hosts and start taking them out. So let's just recap while these two are being a bit passive and what we've seen so far. So early game, it was all about GoOdy's Marine Hellbat push. It did a lot of damage, it forced a lot of units and kept goswser really quite limited in how many drones he could have. Meanwhile though, goswser, he held off wave 2 of that push and then went for some counter aggression with Roach Speedling, and that did a huge amount of damage. To remind you, it killed 18 workers. It was really substantial, and that really brought goswser back ahead in terms of the worker count. He also secured his 3rd and now has his 4th base up, but these swarm hosts, they're looking to potentially be a bit of a problem. The Widow Mine is going to start going to town, but of course that uses the Widow Mine up. The tanks starting to shell away, but the locusts are just going to keep producing, and the swarm hosts are just going to keep shoving out locusts time and time again into the dismay of GoOdy. And the best way to use swarm hosts is you wait for them to actually produce a wave of locusts and then you move them forward. And the only downside is you don't really want to have different spawning queues of them, because that's when you start ending up losing some of their effectiveness. You want to send them in big waves is the best way to use them. So still, we see goswser trying to get more out. He's trying to go the other way. We used up a Widow Mine on the other side as well now, and that is really quite effective. The Raven, though, coming forward. And where are the Hydras? The Hydras so desperately needed now, but there are none on the field. GoOdy, goswser, even though he's got that Hydra den, does not have any on the field, and as such has no way to deal with these Banshees and Raven, and as such the swarm host forced back, and GoOdy has broken the soft containment very effectively indeed. Behind this though, Hive coming up for goswser. He's getting up his Spire as well now. That, in addition to the fact that he's got a Baning Nest and he's doing quite solid on upgrades, is good news for him. Meanwhile, GoOdy, he's already got +2 vehicle weapons, getting level 3 up as well now. These locusts just are going to keep on coming. They're not going to stop anytime soon. They're just a bit out of range, can't quite get there, and I love the fact that when locusts run out of energy, they just explode into that blooded mess, which on a snow map looks even better in my opinion. But nonetheless, we do see here more locusts streaming across. We've got the swarm host starting to move on up and forward. More Hydras added into the composition now, just to make sure our Zerg player is safe from any Banshee harassment, but the tank count is getting very sizable. We're already up to 17 tanks on the field, and as such these locusts may not have too fun. A good way to negate the effect of these tanks is to spread out your swarm hosts in order to try and prevent clumping on the locusts. But a great use of PDDs there, and that means that these Hydras get taken out very quickly for literally nothing, and GoOdy, just being quite cost effective for the time being, is probably going to get another swarm host as well now. That is going to be good news for him, although with a couple of Hydras coming in for support, it looks like the Raven and Banshees will be forced back for the time being. So these two are just staring at each other at the moment. GoOdy, though, looks like he may have had enough. He's just repositioning his army. What's he going to do? Meanwhile, the Locusts coming for the Swarm Host, using the opportunity to move a bit further. Banelings are in the composition as well. What are we going to see here? We need a burrow up. There we go. There's the burrow. That is precisely what we need. Meanwhile, though, the Raven coming forward. We've got a scan coming down here for GoOdy. The point defense drone doing a nice little job of trying to stop some of this damage, but all the Hellbats do start going down. Meanwhile, in come all of the Banelings. They're streaming forward, but is it going to be enough away to see GoOdy with a very sizable tank count? Just looks to be able to push forward. The Swarm Hosts are going to have to retreat. The Banshee is just chipping away at all of them, and that really is problematic for goswser, who is just remaxing on a lot of Ling, Hydra, Roach, but without any Vipers for Blinding Cloud on the tanks, these Swarm Hosts are not really attending a party that they want to be at. They are the odd ones out, and they are really going to start struggling. And whereas we're used to seeing Swarm Hosts be these unstoppable wave upon wave of Locusts, without the right support, they do start running into quite a lot of problems. GoOdy as well is taking down now some additional expansions. He has got more bases streaming across. He's got more command centers in production as well because he's got so many minerals. Meanwhile, the roaches, the hydras, they are coming down through the middle of the map. They're trying to push through this tank line, but the tanks just absolutely decimating everything that goswser has got. And if we look at the loss tab now, just look at this. Over double the resources lost for the time being for GoOdy, who's just got off a hero repair on this Raven. My goodness, that repair was so good, and as such he manages to keep up his mobile detection. But goswser, he's getting up more swarm hosts. He's also got a macro hatch. He could really look at taking some additional bases, but unfortunately we see GoOdy has got an engineering bait block and is just leapfrogging these tanks forward towards the fourth. goswser really in a lot of problems at the moment. He has desperately got to find a way to deal with this mech force. He's trying to push through. He's going to be able to get a tank, maybe even two right now, but with just so few units other than the swarm host there, he's in massive amounts of problems. He does have his hive done, so I'm surprised he hasn't got a viper or two, because just a couple of vipers, imagine like 1, 2, 3 blinding clouds there, but no, we have got goswser trying to push forward. He's trying to go with the wave of locusts, but the tanks just destroying everything. GoOdy has lost hardly anything this game now compared to that of his opponent, and with that, with this many tanks, he is just pushing 24 tanks out. This is just a massive siege line, an absolutely monumental amount of damage being done here. They are down with a +3 weapons as well, and there comes some Seeker missiles. That's going to start blowing up some swarm hosts already, but with the detection, the all-important Ravens in the sky, these tanks are just able to start going for it. A wave of roaches are pushing forward, but it's not going to be enough. Some Thors even joining into the mixture here, and yeah, the goswser, am I using these wrong, or do they just suck? Apparently a bit confused on how to utilize swarm hosts, and the one thing I'd say is they are great, they are just not that great against Terran. The problem with them is that the tanks can deal so much damage, and the only way to get around that is with blinding clouds from Vipers. But yeah, that's just my pro tip. goswser, if you happen to watch this game, Vipers. Get a couple of Vipers, blinding cloud on these clumped up tanks, and suddenly GoOdy would be in a lot of problems. But there is the GG, and that is the end of the game. So we saw an interesting strategy attempt out of goswser there, and I hope each and every one of you did enjoy the game. Thank you very much for watching. Like the video, leave a cool comment, and of course subscribe, and I hope to see each and every one of you tomorrow for yet another new cast. Bye for now.